Egypt, the home of the pyramids and the Sphinx, was the birthplace of the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings. All nations have borrowed from Hermetic wisdom. India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece, and Rome, and other countries partook liberally at the feast of knowledge which the hierophants and masters of the land, Isis, so freely provided for those who came prepared to partake of it. The teaching of Hermetic philosophy was taught by a certain axiom: the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. They did not believe in casting pearls before the swine, but rather held to the teaching, milk for babes, meat for strong men, both of which are maxims familiar to the readers of Christian scriptures, but both of which had been used by the Egyptians for centuries before the Christian era. Additionally, Hermetic wisdom predates all current conventional science in its understanding of the universe. For example, string theory posits that the electrons and quarks within an atom are not zero-dimensional objects, but made up of one-dimensional strings. These strings can oscillate, giving the observed particles their flavor, charge, mass, and spin. Although string theory was originally conceived in ancient Hermetics, conventional science, in its arrogance, has declared it was developed during the late 1960s and early 1970s. For we see in the Kabbalion and the principle of vibration, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, that this was known thousands of years before conventional science had even pondered the idea of current quantum physics. The second Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above, tells us that the great second Hermetic principle embodies the truth that there is a harmony, agreement, and correspondence between the several planes of manifestation, life, and being. For the purpose of convenience of thought, the Hermetic philosophy considers that the universe may be divided into three great classes of phenomena, known as the three great planes, namely, 1. The great physical plane, 2. The great mental plane, and 3. The great spiritual plane. In short, the three great planes may be regarded as three great groups of degrees of life manifestation. The great physical plane includes all forms of that which we call matter, and all forms of that which we call energy or force. But you must remember that the Hermetic philosophy does not recognize matter as a thing in itself, or as having a separate existence even in the mind of the all. The teachings are that matter is but a form of energy, that is, energy at a low rate of vibrations of a certain kind. One of the 7 minor physical planes is called the plane of ethereal substance. The plane of ethereal substance comprises that which science speaks of as the ether, a substance of extreme tenuity and elasticity, pervading all universal space and acting as a medium for the transmission of waves of energy such as light, heat, electricity, etc. The ethereal substance forms a connecting link between matter, so-called, and energy, and partakes of the nature of each. Remote viewing is the practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen target using paranormal means, in particular extrasensory perception, ESP, or sensing with the mind. Remote viewing was popularized in the 1990s following the declassification of documents related to the Stargate project, a $20 million research program sponsored by the U.S. federal government to determine any potential military application of psychic phenomena. Although the scientific community rejects remote viewing due to the absence of an evidence base, the lack of a theory which would explain remote viewing, it is still practiced by the military today for various projects. In 1951, the Theosophical Publishing House published its 3rd edition of the Occult Chemistry book. This work contains a record of remote viewing into the structure of matter. The observations were carried out at intervals over a period of nearly 40 years, the first in August 1895 and the last in October 1933. The following is a hypothesis which may explain the nature of the self-feeding vortex located in the center of the Orion Nebula using the principle of correspondence. In cosmogony, the nebular hypothesis is the most widely accepted model explaining the formation and evolution of the solar system and stars. In this theory, Stars form in massive and dense clouds of molecular hydrogen from interstellar medium, which is the matter that exists in the space between the star systems in a galaxy. Although science has a theory on how stars are produced when material is available to produce them, they cannot account for how the matter exists to begin the process. This brings us to the object called the Anu. According to the occult chemistry book, after a chemical atom has been disassociated by 3 times, the 4th dissociation leads to a subatomic particle called the ultimate physical atom, or Anu. In the one case, force pours in from the outside, from the 4th dimensional space, the astral plane, or aether, and passing through the Anu, pours into the physical world. In the second, it pours in from the physical world and out through the Anu, into the outside again. That is, it vanishes from the physical world. We call the Anu from which the force comes out positive or male, those through which it disappears negative or female. It will be seen that the Anu is a sphere, slightly flattened, and there is a depression at the point which force flows in, causing a heart-like form. Each is surrounded by a field. The Anu can scarcely be said to be a thing, though it is the material out of which all things physical are composed. It is formed by the flow of the life force and vanishes with its EBB. The life force is known to Theosophists as Fohat, the force of which all physical plane forces are differentiations. In order to examine the construction of the Anu, a space is artificially made. By a certain action of the will known to students, it is possible to make such a space by pressing back and walling off the matter of space. In other words, through the action of will or divine thought, Anu are created, and Fohat moves through the Anu and reorganizes to create matter in the physical world. Let us take a look at some of the interesting correspondences. It is also said that the Anu is a sun in miniature in its own universe of the inconceivably minute. Each of the 7 whorls is connected with one of the planetary logo, so that each planetary logos has a direct influence playing on the very matter of which all things are constructed. It is interesting to note that planetary logos are also connected to the Tree of Life as well. This is an interesting correspondence between the object in the Orion Nebula and the Tree of Life as seen here. Additionally, it is quite interesting to note that this would form in the middle of a star nebula where stars and suns are born. It is interesting to note also that the translation of the Mayan creation myth reads as follows: "And so heart of sky thinks, who is there to speak my name? Who is there to praise me? How shall I make it dawn? Heart of sky only says the word earth, and the earth rises like a mist from the sea. He only thinks of it, and there it is." According to occult chemistry, the Fohat, or life force, that pours into the Anu forms a heart shape, and is said to have correspondence between the atom, the human heart, the heart of the sun, and the heart of the galaxy as seen here. It is also interesting to note that a certain action of will created by students or divine thought are engaged when an Anu are formed. Thus this connects the Anu to the mind as well. As seen in the churches around Europe, there is definitely a correspondence between the center of the Orion Nebula and the mind, as seen here. According to occult chemistry, if an opening be made in the wall thus constructed, the surrounding force flows in, and 3 whorls immediately appear surrounding the whole with their triple spiral of 2½ coils, and returning to their origin by a spiral within the Anu. These are at once followed by 7 finer whorls, which follow the spiral of the first 3 on the outer surface, and returning to their origin by a spiral within that, flowing in the opposite direction, form a caduceus with the first 3. As far back as we go in history, there are references to the caduceus representing higher consciousness from Egypt to Samaria to the Vatican. Additionally, there is also an interesting correspondence between the object in the Orion Nebula and the caduceus as seen here. The Kabbalion states, "The universe is mental, held in the mind of the all." There appears to be a connection to creative force in our reality, the mind, and this area of the cosmos as depicted by the churches. As this study is newly formed, we can only look at the correspondences and what is being pointed to through research. liberally at the feast of knowledge which the hierophants and masters of the land, Isis, so freely provided for those who came prepared to partake of it. The teaching of Hermetic philosophy was taught by a certain axiom: the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ear. Additionally, Hermetic wisdom predates all current conventional science in its understanding of the universe. For example, string theory posits that the electrons and quarks within an atom are not zero-dimensional objects, but made up of one. The home of the pyramids and the Sphinx was the birthplace of the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings. All nations have borrowed from Hermetic wisdom: India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece, and Rome, and other countries partook. Egypt, years of understanding. They did not believe in casting pearls before the swine, but rather held to the teaching, milk for babes, meat for strong men, both of which are maxims familiar to the readers of Christian scriptures, but both of which had been used by the Egyptians for centuries before the Christian era.